Hello, this is Sinta Ebersohn from Fair Divorce, and today with me is Sara Davison, and she's a multi-award winning divorce coach. I wrote down a few just to mention a few names. She's won the Best You Self-Development Coach of the Year. She's won the APCTC Award, that's for the Association of Professional Coaches, Trainers and Consultants. And recently in this year, she's won Influential Businesswoman and the UK Enterprise Awards, just to name a few. There are many of them. Sara, welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm delighted to be here.
To tell you also, Sara wrote more than one book, and she's busy with her third one. Uncoupling is one that's already listed on my website as a resource. And there's another one called Split. Would you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so it's called The Split, from breakup to breakthrough in 30 days or less. So in The Split, I've broken it down to give you a chapter a day, because I think, when you're going through a breakup, it's such an overwhelming, difficult process, and having too much information all in one go can be a little bit challenging. So I encourage my readers just to do bite-sized small steps every day. And I do that over 30 days to move you through all the different stages. So there's a chapter a day it's designed to get you through that first initial difficult phase, that you go through at the beginning of a breakup.
I think that's brilliant, because going through a divorce process is so overwhelming. So to just have a little bit of guidance and inspiration and maybe practical advice could be really valuable.
Yeah, I mean, everything I do comes from my own breakup. I mean, I've been coaching for 26 years now, which is a long time. And, when I went through my own divorce about 12 years ago now, I remember I was actually in Australia with a friend of mine sitting on a beach there. I had an office out there with my ex-husband, and it all come out, and he was leaving me. He'd met somebody else and was moving on pretty quick. And I was devastated. It hit me like a freight train, and my whole world turned upside down. He was my business partner. He was the father to our son. He was, I thought, my best friend. So it really, I was struggling, and I thought, gosh, if I'm a coach and I've got all these skills on how to manage my emotional state and I'm struggling, how on earth does everybody else cope who doesn't have access to those tools or hasn't had the chance to learn those yet? So I looked around for help. I looked for ways to help me through what I was dealing with, and I couldn't really find anything that addressed my specific situation. So I decided just to dig deep and combine my coaching skills from the 15, 16 years at that point I've been coaching with the divorce process that I was thrown into, which for those people listening who are going through a divorce, you'll know it's like landing on the moon. The language is different. The people talk in jargon, the lawyers, it's all consuming. It doesn't just affect your relationship, it affects every relationship you have, your parenting ability, your friendships, other family members. It affects your ability to work, your ability to get out of bed, your mental health, sometimes your physical health. And so I decided to put together a program that basically combined all my coaching skills with my own personal divorce experience, really just to get me through. My son was only one. So, I had to show up. I was a single parent overnight. I still had to show up and work with my ex, which was extremely painful. And my whole life had changed overnight, pretty much. So, I decided I needed to do something to get me through it. And these tools that I used for myself, that I tried and tested, and that proved to work, they're the tools that I now share with everybody else, because I decided on that beach in Australia that if I was going to go to hell and back with my divorce, I was definitely going to turn it into something positive, not just for me, but to share these tools so nobody else had to feel quite as desperate and alone and do all the ugly crying that I did at the beginning, to really help other people as well, really, which really helped me, I suppose, get through my breakup too.
It sounds like you have a wealth of information and support out there. And it's wonderful that you developed that, tapping into the skills that you already had, which means for any one of us who want to work with you, that you really have a good background and you really know what you're talking about, and having been there yourself. Talking about the ugly crying, I think that's a necessary part as well in the divorce process. We have to mourn. the loss, and we have to really cry ourselves out as well.
Absolutely. I think, well, there's a limit, obviously. I mean, if you are stuck in that devastating emotion of crying and helplessness, then that's not healthy, but it is healthy to let those emotions out. So for some people, it will be crying. For some people, maybe you want to go to the gym and punch a punch bag. For others of you, it might be talking it through with somebody. Yeah, but you do need to release some of those negative emotions. And that can be really challenging because some people find it easy to talk. But then talking too much will keep you stuck. If you keep connecting to your sad story all the time, that's going to keep you stuck too. So, I mean, it really is different for everybody, and it depends on your personality, your coping mechanisms that you may have adopted from watching how other people cope with things, which may not be serving you right now. A lot of people will turn to maybe drinking more or partying too much. There's so many ways that people turn to help them manage those difficult times. So again, my job as the divorce coach is really shining a light on your behaviors, what you're doing, how you're coping. And then by shining a light and making it conscious behavior rather than just what you've always done, looking at different options, different ways that you can do things that are going to serve you better and help you let go of your ex and start to move forward. So it really starts with really looking at where you're at, the process that we've all got to go through if you're going through that breakup, which includes, as you say, the ugly crying, the upset, that loss cycle that we all go through, but knowing that you can get through it. You're not alone. There are things that you can do, the tools and techniques that I share with my clients, they're all designed to help you move forward, whether that's letting go of your ex, whether you are consciously uncoupling, as Gwyneth Paltrow brought us, which was great, or whether you are what I've termed aggressively severing, whether even if you don't want to have a difficult divorce, if your ex is hell-bent on making it difficult, then for those of you listening, I know some of you will be going, yes, I know what that means. Then, there's things you can do for that too. In fact, I've just recently, because of the rise in demand of people coming out of toxic relationships, and I think the pandemic has definitely shone a light on that. And I'm the patron of a domestic abuse charity here in the UK called the Dash charity. And we've seen a huge rise in domestic abuse cases. And that could not just violence. I think there's a misunderstanding about domestic abuse. It's not just violence. It's also coercive control, emotional control, financial and economic abuse. So lots of different types of abuse. But if you are divorcing somebody like that or coming out of a relationship with a toxic partner, it is going to be different to, if you were divorcing someone who, yes, there might be a conflict over who gets the piano and when you see the dog, but they're not wanting to annihilate you and crush you and leave you with nothing, So there's a different way of handling that. And I've seen there's been a rise in the need for that information, which I also share. So yeah, that's something that I don't know if you've seen that in South Africa, but that's definitely something that's happening here.
Yes, it's happening all over the place. In South Africa also, domestic abuse and specifically financial abuse is rife. And I think we don't really have a true idea of how much financial abuse is happening, because in many cases, and it's unfortunately mostly women, who are raising their children by themselves without financial support of their partners, are in such a state of poverty that they don't even have a cell phone or access to internet or anything. So we can't even reach them to really measure how many of them there are. So it's really, really a big problem in the rural areas in South Africa as well.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some webinars with Michelle Dewsbury in the States. She also campaigns on these issues, and it is a global issue, and I think the pandemic has shone a big light on it, and I think there is more awareness now, which is great. But if you are in those situations, if you are coming out of a toxic relationship, there are things you can do. There are specific things you can do to take your control back, which is what we lose when we're coming out of an abusive relationship. We've handed our control over. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is that when you get out of the relationship, if it's an abusive relationship, the abuse doesn't stop there. In
Exactly.
fact, post-separation abuse is a huge, huge issue. And that's what my coaching clinic is full of, people who have divorced or are in the process of divorcing. Or sometimes I've got a client right now who's 20 years outside of that and her ex is still being abusive. Now, this is really common. And if you're going through that, you are not alone. There are, thousands and thousands of women and men. It happens to both sexes, but predominantly women, which is why sometimes men do get a little bit overlooked, I think, in this, but it does happen to men and women, that are going through this. So you are not alone. And I've created several things that can help people to get through that. How to manage that ex so that you protect yourself without getting drawn back in, but you start to take your power back and build up your self-reliance so that you are not dependent on them for anything. There's minimal communication, and you learn how to handle what they're doing. Because if you understand the game you're in, and you are in a game, unfortunately, whether you like that term or not, they play games with everybody, right? But it's the same game, it's the same set of rules. And if you understand and you can master the game and be 2 steps ahead, then it takes the sting out, because you can understand what's going on and why it's happening. It doesn't excuse it, and it's not your fault. It's not your fault. And that's a message I think a lot of people need to hear if they're coming out of an abusive relationship. It's not your fault. There are things you can do to start to build back your strength. And that's really important, especially if you've got kids too.
Yes, and that's the good news. There's always something you can do, and that's what you teach people. So I know that you've recently scheduled a retreat, a virtual retreat, actually, which I'd love for you to tell us more about, specifically addressing toxic relationships and abusive partnerships.
Yeah, so I've been running retreats live and virtual for many years. But what I found over the last couple of years was that between 80 and 100% of people coming to see me are coming out of some sort of toxic relationship. So I've created a retreat, a virtual one, and it will be live at some point when that happens again. It'd be nice. Where, it's called How to Divorce a Difficult Partner. And when I say difficult because it means abusive. Okay, I want to be really clear on that. But again, my job is not to label, not to diagnose, not to say, oh, he or she's this, that, or the other. That's not my job. I'm a coach. I'm not a neurologist, psychiatrist, analyst, any of those things. My concern is with you. You're my client. I want to help you. And if we use big names to label people, it gives them more significance. And if we think about it, they're taking enough significance as it is, right? And also it magnifies the impact on you. How the words we use will really affect what's going on for you in your world. So dialing down the emotional intensity is something we look at on the retreat. So yes, it's called How to Divorce a Difficult Person and Recover from a Toxic Relationship. Because a lot of the things that you go through will stay with you. It's not like, oh, I'm out, whoa, everything's great. It will be better, obviously, and there is a sense of relief and freedom, but there's also, you've been trained in a certain way to react to certain triggers, and that takes time to unhook, unpick, dial down. And that's what we look at. And that's everything from my coaching techniques, but also different therapies that can help holistically with the body, because a lot of trauma will still reside in the body. So really looking at different ways that you can really care for yourself and help you to get back on track, because you can do it, and you can turn your life around, and you can go on to inspire others. In fact, I now coach, I have a training school called the International Divorce Coach Center of Excellence, which trains people who've never done any coaching before, and some people that have done some coaching, but mostly it's people who've never done any coaching before. And they come to me because they want to learn to become a breakup and divorce coach, because they've been through so much themselves. They want to do kind of what I did in a way, turning that trauma into some kind of triumph where you can help other people so that they don't have to feel the same as you. So my training school takes you through how to cope with all those strategies. So a lot of the people in our coaching community are going through breakups, going through divorces, learning the skills themselves, becoming stronger, and then going out there to empower others all over the world. We have over 200 coaches in 15 different countries around the world. And yeah, it's really great, because the more people that want to do this work, the more people can help others out there. And it's spreading the word that you're not alone and there are things you can do.
That's wonderful, because divorce is so common. I mean, the statistics worldwide are 60% and above. of marriages that end in divorce. And for second marriages, it's even higher. So it's wonderful that we can have people out there who have experienced it themselves and are able to help others. It's great that you're doing that. Something I wanted to just ask about, you mentioned about giving people and things labels and names, and in that way actually giving it some power, which makes perfect sense to me. I have find often that people have lived in a relationship or a marriage for 20 years without realizing that it's an abusive situation, without knowing that some of the things that were done or the dynamics between the two were not normal or not healthy. And then it helps to give it some name. It's almost as if it's a relief to somebody to realize, oh, I've actually been in an abusive relationship for 20 years. So the lifestyle, the habits, and the behavioral patterns that I've learned up till now is actually not healthy.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, understanding and getting clarity is absolutely essential to being able to move on, because you've got to understand. And like you say, a lot of people won't really understand that because it will have been normalized. Yes. And they will have minimalized it over that relationship to be able to stay in the relationship. Okay. If you acknowledge just how bad it was, or really realize the full extent of how different it was to a healthy relationship, then you may have got out earlier, right? Or you may have, realized and been taking some action. But, obviously a lot of people don't. And when you come out the other side and you start to realize, that can be a tough time, actually. And when I'm coaching, or my coaches are coaching people through this process, we have to be really careful, because obviously, when you start to realize that you were in an abusive relationship, it can be embarrassing, it can be humiliating, it can be really upsetting, obviously, but also it can be very liberating. Yes. So we've got to balance those two things, because clarity will give you power. If you don't understand it, you're going to stay stuck, because nothing's going to really make sense. When you get that clarity, then, and you understand what is abuse, why do we get into abusive relationships, why do we stay? It's not stupid people that get into abusive relationships. Very often it's very intelligent people that get into these difficult relationships, and they stay for a long period of time. But why? And when you start to understand why and realize it wasn't your fault, there may have been certain behaviors you have or had that enabled that relationship to grow, but that doesn't mean that it's your fault. By looking at that and understanding, it's important to get that clarity to learn from the past. Because if you don't learn the lessons, recognize the signs, the red flags of somebody that is potentially an abusive partner, and there are signs. If you look back, and hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it? You Look back and you think, yeah, when that happened, that made me feel uncomfortable. Oh, yes, that wasn't right either. And I thought about that, but we don't want to see it at the time for many, many reasons. And maybe you want to be in love and everything else is great, and they're very good at hoovering us back into those relationships. So when you understand that, and it's essential to understand it, otherwise you're going to keep repeating the same pattern. You're going to get into another abusive relationship, and that's not what we want. So there's a lot of learning from the past, banking those lessons, because if you don't, the future has a funny way of keep, reteaching you those lessons, right? Until you go, okay, I get it. I'm done. I learned my lesson. So you can spot the red flags. So you are confident to get back out there and start dating again, because you know what the signs are and you're fully consciously aware. So if you're on a date and someone's being rude or a bit selfish, or they're telling you things that make you feel uncomfortable or don't really add up, so gaslighting you maybe, and there's quite often signs of that really from early on in relationships. Once you're consciously aware and understand that, you can spot the signs and filter them out. And I always say, if you see any of those signs, deploy your parachute and get the hell on out of there immediately. Okay. It's not he might change, or I might be able to do something, or he just doesn't get me yet. When he knows me, he'll be different. No, it's immediate evacuation, deploy parachute, get yourself out of the building. So, these are the sort of things that we go through, so that you're not dragging this with you into every relationship. It's not stopping you from meeting someone else or going out there. Because even though I understand that is scary, if you're going to stay at home and not go out, well, you better hope that you fancy the Amazon driver or the postman, because otherwise, I don't know about you, but no one else knocks on my front door. So we have to get you back out there, but we've got to do it in a way where you've got that knowledge, your understanding of it. You understand the sort of things that maybe you're not going to repeat again, and the warning signs. So all this is really important to rebuild your confidence so you can get back out there and start feeling happy again and, you know, living life to the full.
Yeah, I like what you said, bank the lessons. I really love that phrase. It's a good one, bank the lessons. And we're always learning lessons in life. We've got to bank them. I love that. But I have to ask you this question. Narcissist is the word that I hear so often. And I honestly feel that it's become almost a fashionable thing to label people as a narcissist or any difficult partner. In your experience, are there really so many people out there who are really narcissists, or do we all have some narcissistic traits and not many of us are really proper narcissists? Or is it true that there are so many of them out there?
Well, it's a really good question. I don't use those terms. I mean, one, I'm not qualified to do so. And I'm always saying to my coaches, stay in your lane. Okay. We're not, well, you know, I'm not qualified as I said, as a neurologist or a niatrist. I'm a coach and I can go really deep with you and I can really help you unpack what's going on. And I'm trained in lots of different things like neuro-linguistic programming and CBT and hypnotherapy and TFT and all lots and lots of different things. But I'm not going to go out diagnosing other people. One, I haven't met them. Two, to diagnose a personality disorder, you know, you do need months and months of working with that person to understand, you know, the analysts that I know that operate on those levels who are diagnosing those personality disorders. It's not something they can say, oh, well, I've spoken to her and her ex definitely is XYZ. That's not how it works, right? So I think it's dangerous. I don't like it. I think it's not something I would do. I really think by giving away all your focus on your ex and what they might be and different personalities, again, you're giving your power to them. You know, understanding what the game is that they're playing is key. So what we can do, and I recommend you definitely do, is look at what they're doing so that you can master that game. Okay, because then you may think that they are very, very clever, and a lot of them are, but they're textbook. They follow a pattern. And that's the interesting thing. When you understand the pattern, and then you can disassociate yourself from it. Because, you know, you might be able to leave the room if they're there, or you might be able to go no contact as much as possible. But if you're still emotionally connected and you're still getting energetically drawn into that game, that's where it becomes all consuming and damaging for you. So what we have to do is disassociate, and by understanding it, and again, getting clarity on what is happening, what they do. You know, it's very classic. You know, there's that cycle where they'll be super nice, they'll draw you in, there'll be some tension, there'll be an incident, it'll be horrible. Then you'll be reeling, you'll start to pull away, then they'll come in and try and get you back. You know, it's that constant cycle of abuse that keeps going. And then the tactics they do, you know, if they're speaking or typing, they're probably lying. If you go with that premise onto everything that they say and do, and just think about, okay, what are they trying to achieve here? Rather than, oh my goodness, that really hurts, or, oh, that's not true, they've got the wrong end of the stick there, let me try and justify. That's exactly what they want to do, because they're connecting with you and getting energetically involved. So there's so many things that we can do to disassociate ourselves, not just in distance physically, but also emotionally. And that's what's key. So I think for me, the focus isn't on labeling. I don't really see how that takes us forward. I do see a lot more people jumping on that bandwagon who maybe aren't qualified to do so. But, you know, I'm not judging. Everyone's got their own thing. But for me and the way I train my coaches, it's very much client focused. What's going on for this client? What's showing up specific to their ex with this client? How can we educate them on patterns, behaviors, so that they can learn and then actually disassociate and rebuild themselves?
Yes. And that's the important thing. I agree with you, because for me, it's always realizing that we cannot change other people's behavior. We can only understand it or try and understand it to a certain degree, but we have no control over what they do and how they behave. The important thing is to get the insight into what's happening and then take a step back and start working on ourselves, because that we can do. We can create more self-awareness. We can acquire tools and skills to do better. So that's the way to go.
I do on my podcast, Heartbreak to Happiness, we do 3 episodes a week. So it's big. And what I do on that platform is I do interview the people that do talk about these things. So I have, you know, narcissistic abuse experts or psychoanalysts on, or psychiatrists, or, you know, lawyers. We have a whole mix of different people, victims of abuse, survivors, people that have overcome real traumas in their life and gone on and turned their life around. So, you know, there is that information available. I think it is important to understand, obviously, from lots of different points of view. So there are ways of getting educated in those fields, but I think it's really important to focus on you and not your ex.
Fantastic. So what else is happening? I know we're still under COVID regulations to a large degree, and lots have been happening virtually. So we've spoken about your virtual retreat that's coming up. I think it's starting early October.
Yeah, there's one starting in October. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we've got the retreats. We also do coaching. So you can come and do some coaching with me, obviously virtually. I mean, I have clients all around the world. But also, you know, if you don't want to coach from me or it's too expensive, you can coach one of my accredited coaches as well. And that's all on my website, saradavison.com. There's a button that says book a coaching session, and you can actually book a free discovery call with my coaches. Well, you can see their videos to start with and decide which one suits you best, because I think that's really important, picking a good fit for you. And then when you find the coach that you would rather work with, you can book a free discovery call, have a chat with them, see if they can help you, and what they would do with you. And then you can coach with them. Yeah. So there's the coaching side as well. Obviously, I've got my books, I've got my podcasts, and my training school. So if you are thinking that you are, you know, wanting to give back, there's something there that you would like to turn that into a positive and be part of a community of people. I mean, you kind of have to be warm and friendly to do this job. So, you know, as a byproduct of the training school, we have a community of absolutely lovely, wonderful people. And it's a very interactive community supporting coaches all around the world, growing their businesses. And I show exactly what I've done to grow my global business, because I'm doing this. This is what I do every day. So I'm sharing everything I've done and am doing with all my coaches, so they can go out there and help as many people as possible too. So yeah, there's lots of options, lots of help out there for you. You're never on your own. There are lots of things you can do. So, you know, it's great that, you know, breakup and divorce coaches now are out there, because it's a relatively new career for a lot of people, actually. But the support is there. So do ask for help if you need it.
That's wonderful. And for those of you who are watching, I will also put Sara's contact details in the comments below this video. And remember that on my website, fairdivorce.co.za, Sara's courses and offerings and events are all listed there under the directories. And she is a fair divorce practitioner, so she's part of this team, and all her events are also shared on all our social media platforms. The Heartbreak to Happiness podcast, we've shared many of them as well, so you'll find them there as well. But I think that's more or less it. Have we covered everything?
Yeah, well, thank you as well for all the work you do, because if it wasn't for you, you know, that you offer so much support, and bringing all these tools together in one place is really wonderful. So thank you so much for the work you do. And I know you help a lot of people. So yeah, I'm grateful that you invited me on. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for bringing all this wealth of knowledge and wisdom and expertise. We are grateful for it. And I know you help a lot of people. And thank you for your time. I hope to chat to you again soon.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sara. Take care.